The Swiss Family Robinson. The Swiss family was on a big boat in a wide ocean. Little friends asked if they could explore below the deck. Mother said okay, and Franz's older brothers Hans and Ernst went with him. In the dark rooms under the deck, they saw animals like dogs, horses, and lots of boxes and barrels. Meanwhile, their oldest brother Fritz talked to some kids on the deck. They said they were going to live in Australia, which excited a girl named Jenny Montrose from Scotland. Suddenly, it got really dark outside, and Father stopped writing in his journal. He said there was going to be a storm and told Fritz to find his brothers and bring them to their room. That night, the family listened to the storm. The ship rocked a lot, and big waves hit it loudly. Ernst asked his father if they'd be okay, but Father wasn't sure. On the deck, the ship's crew was tired and couldn't see well in the rain. They noticed rocks ahead and there was a terrible noise at the front of the ship. Father went to the deck and came back looking scared. He said everyone had to get into the ship's boats quickly, but when the family went to the deck, there were no boats left for them. Mother thought the ship was sinking. Fritz remembered seeing barrels downstairs and suggested making a raft with them to leave the ship. Father and the older boys found barrels, tools, and rope downstairs, but they couldn't make the raft during the storm. So, they waited until morning. Back in their room, Mother gave bread to the boys, and Father worried about what might happen. The next morning, the weather was better, and they saw that the front of the ship was underwater, but they were close to an island. The older boys brought barrels up, and Father made a raft using tools, ropes, and wood. That afternoon, they put the raft in the sea and got on it with their things, but the waves were big, and the raft was small. They hoped it could carry them all to the island. As they moved away from the ship, Franz noticed that the dogs were in the water behind them. Ernst quickly pulled them onto the raft. Father shouted directions as big waves hit them, but slowly the island came closer. When they arrived at the beach, Mother was very happy. The boys wanted to explore the cliffs and tall trees nearby. Father said it was okay but warned them not to go too far. As Mother looked for wood, she heard Hans in pain. He was in the water near some rocks, feeling something on his leg. Mother quickly pulled a big blue lobster off his leg and happily declared it would be their dinner. After cooking the lobster, the family ate it hungrily and shared some with the dogs. Franz named the dogs Bello and Juno. Father made a tent using cloth from the ship and ropes between 3 trees for the family to sleep in. But that night, they couldn't sleep well because of the strange cries of animals on the island. The next morning, Father said they needed to find food and look for other people from the ship. He and Fritz went into the forest, followed by Juno and Bello. They found a river and tall coconut trees but wondered how to get the coconuts down. Suddenly, monkeys started throwing coconuts at them, but Fritz and Father managed to make the monkeys drop more coconuts. When a little monkey fell from a tree, Fritz caught it and named it Nips. They climbed a hill and realized they were the only people on the island. They found fruit trees but checked if the fruit was safe to eat by seeing if Nips ate it first. Later, they caught birds for dinner and returned home. Father realized they needed more supplies from the ship. Mother was worried about their safety, but Father, Fritz, and Hans took the raft to the ship. They found seeds, guns, and live animals, tying barrels to them to help them swim behind the raft. While they were moving slowly through the water, a big shark appeared under the raft. Fritz shot the shark, and they were relieved when it didn't return. Upon returning to the beach, they shared the news with Mother, feeling like they now had a horse. That night, the family heard a noise and saw yellow eyes watching them. Ernst noticed a small jackal and thought it could be his pet, so he tried to catch it with a rope. But then Bello and Juno scared off the bigger jackals. Father realized the animals on the island could easily attack their tent, so he decided they needed a better house. Days later, they found big trees on a hill. Father climbed the biggest tree and said it would be their new house. They built the treehouse by putting pieces of wood between branches for the floor and covering them with a big cloth. When the treehouse was done, Hans asked what to call it. Fritz suggested falconwood, after seeing a falcon in the sky. One day, Hans wanted to train his pet jackal, Fangs, to hunt. He and Fritz took it into the forest and heard a loud noise from the trees. Suddenly, hundreds of buffaloes ran out of the forest towards them. The boys hid behind rocks, and Fritz managed to catch a young buffalo with a rope. In autumn, Mother made a garden with their seeds, and the boys gathered food from the forest, storing it in barrels for the winter. Father made a room for their animals under the treehouse and moved his tools to the beach tent since there wasn't enough space in the house. When winter came, the family stayed in their treehouse, and their animals lived in a home at the bottom of the tree. It rained a lot, and they didn't have much food. Father wrote in his journal, worrying if their animals would survive and if their seeds would grow. After a long rainy period, spring arrived. Their animals were fine, and little green plants grew in the garden. Father decided to go to the beach for his tools but couldn't find the ship. Instead, they found wood pieces in their torn tent with tools and barrels scattered around. Nips chased a forest animal into a hole in the cliffs, and Ernst discovered a big cave behind it. They made a door into the cave, thinking it could be their new home. For weeks, Father and the boys worked on the cave house, making rooms and cutting windows in the rock. Mother found tall plants near the beach and suggested using them to make a reed floor for the cave. One day, Hans went into a swamp to gather more reeds but started sinking. He called for help, and his pet jackal, Fangs, saved him by pulling him out with his tail. When Hans got back home, he explained what happened. Another day, a big snake appeared near the river, and Father urged everyone to move to the cave. They stayed there all day with guns, but the snake didn't attack. That evening, the horse ran into the swamp, and Fritz tried to catch it. But the snake noticed Fritz and approached him menacingly. Fritz heard his father and Hans warning him not to move. He looked down and saw the snake. Hans excitedly exclaimed they had killed it. Father decided they would be safe from storms and snakes in the cave house during winter. They prepared the cave for the coming months, making cloth from plants and animal hair for new clothes. One night, Mother suggested naming their island home. Ernst suggested New Switzerland, and although it sounded funny, everyone liked the name. Over the years, the family turned their garden into a small farm, growing food and keeping many animals and pets. Franz, now 12, wanted to explore the island with his older brothers. Mother worried, but Father believed they needed to learn. One day, Hans returned with a red face. They had found honey in a tree, but it was surrounded by bees. The following summer, Fritz made a new boat with father using wood and animal skins. He wanted to explore the island by sea, and father allowed it. Fritz spent many days exploring the island, swimming, hunting, and camping on the beach in a makeshift tent. Once, when birds stole fish from his boat, Franz caught one of them and found a message attached to its leg. Excitedly, he opened the message. Fritz found a message from Jenny Montrose, a Scottish girl he met on the ship. She was living on an island near Australia and needed help. He searched for 2 days and finally found her in a sea cave. Jenny explained that she swam into the cave after her boat sank near the cliffs. She had been writing messages but was scared, thinking Fritz was a pirate. Fritz brought Jenny to their home, and she shared books she had from the ship. Ernst excitedly informed everyone about Fritz bringing someone with him. The family welcomed Jenny and showed her around the farm. She felt happy to have a family again. During winter, the boys read books, improving their English, especially Fritz, thanks to Jenny's books. Mother joked that it wasn't just the books but also Jenny helping Fritz. After 7 years on the island, they celebrated their arrival. While jubilant, they heard a ship's gun in response to their celebration. Fritz and Jenny realized it could be pirates. The family feared pirates, but none arrived at the cave house. The next day, father and Fritz went out on the boat and saw a ship ahead. They realized it wasn't pirates but the British. The captain revealed he was James Montrose, Jenny's father. He had been searching for her and had heard about her on the island from captured pirates. Overjoyed, he visited the island, and Jenny was ecstatic to reunite with her father. A week later, Fritz shared with his family that Jenny would be leaving for England, and he wanted to marry her and accompany her. They informed Captain Montrose, who agreed. The captain then married Jenny and Fritz. As they bid farewell, father gave them a box, telling them to open it later. On the ship, they looked back at their island home until it disappeared. Opening the box, they found father's journal inside.